Grab a drink, grab a seat. Okay, our first talk is by Greg Sutcliffe. All I'm going to say is don't buy Google shares.
You hear me all right? Is that working? Great, good. Okay, yeah, so my name's Greg Sutcliffe. By day, I am a community manager for Red Hat. I work on a project called Foreman. There we go, logo, lovely. That's my important bit done. So that's not what I'm going to talk about tonight. If you want to know about Foreman and config management and DevOps stuff, come talk to me afterwards. Tonight, I'm going to talk about one of my hobbies, which is all about data decentralization, privacy, handling things like this. This talk is a little bit rushed. The family situation's a bit crazy at the moment. I haven't had a lot of time to write this, so I do apologize if it's a bit sketchy. But hey, well, hopefully it'll work. So who knows what I'm talking about when I say free lunch? There's a phrase, right?
Lunch that's free?
This phrase. Who's heard that phrase before? Yeah, there's no such thing as a free lunch, right? Now, I don't necessarily agree with Milton Friedman on a large amount of things. I am not a libertarian. But in this case, I think he is right, although I think we use it in different ways. But I think that in general, we take a lot of things that are free for granted, and we don't really question why they are free. To put it into another phrase that my dad taught me, is like, where's the money? And I'm sure other people heard that as well, right? So when you start thinking about where's the money and where are these services coming from, you very quickly realize that the service given to us is not the service that the company offers, right? The service the company offers and makes money from goes to other people, and we are the product. And that is a bit of an issue for me, to be quite honest. Now, a lot of the time, we could, if even for those people who haven't realized this, now you do, now you know. For those people who have, sometimes it's okay, sometimes it's worth the trade-off, right? If we're getting a service out of it that is valuable to us, and we don't mind what's done with our data afterwards, then that's absolutely fine. But I don't think we really think about the consequences very often. And I think this could be dangerous. And I want to give you just a few examples. Firstly, I'm going to start recent and go backwards. So just this week, Google got handed a fairly large fine for a collaboration it did with the Royal Free Hospital down in London, in which they used 1.6 million patient records as part of a trial with their DeepMind AI system and didn't tell anybody about it. They didn't tell the patients, didn't warn them what was going on with their records. They didn't take any kind of sensible precautions about personal data, and rightly so, the ICO gave them a slap for it. But now this talk's not about this kind of thing, because there's not a lot we as individuals can do about this, apart from to challenge the culture that it is okay to do this with our records. Because it would appear that while DeepMind have changed their tune and become a little bit contrite, the Royal Free are still going, well, thanks for your input, and we take it on board. You broke the law. It's like a thief saying, well, thanks for your input on how I should break and enter better next time. So, yeah, there's not a lot we can do about it, but it's good to be aware of it. Something perhaps more interesting, I talked briefly about home automation in the introductions. I do question why we like sending data to the internet for home automation. It's not a good idea. And there's two parts to this. This is one part of it. So this was last year, this was April last year. And Google bought Nest. Nest had bought a company called Revolve. And then out of nowhere, pretty much I think they gave users a 1-month notice. They shut down the Revolve servers, bricked their $300 hubs. No recourse, nothing you can do about it, nothing you can say. It's dead, forget about it. Unless you want to get really super techie and start reflashing the things. But that's a different talk. So this is bad in terms of where does our data go, but there's also the privacy issue as well. There's data about our homes going out to the cloud here. And I think this is more relevant with something like Amazon Echo. We've got a real problem there about what's going to be done with that data. Now, there's interesting theories about this. We could have a long debate about the privacy side of this. This talk isn't really about privacy. It's more about data decentralization. But if you want to talk privacy over a beer, I'll be happy to do that. Going back a little bit further, talking about data that we give to companies on the social side. This one made the headlines, and rightly so. 700,000 people used in a social experiment to alter emotions. The scary thing is that it worked. Still scary that they did it, and without really much recourse to thinking about why they were doing it, or perhaps they were and they didn't tell us. But in any case, rather dangerous to allow people to manipulate our emotions that way. Who's familiar with the phrase confirmation bias? Everybody, good. Who's familiar with the phrase the backfire effect? Nobody, good. Oh, one person, fantastic. This one's really good. This is a great book, and if you're interested in things like how we consume information, then have a read. If you want to have a look, I have a copy here. And I might get it out because sadly my open office notes are not showing, and I'm having to use my much briefer markdown notes, which don't have the bit in it that I wanted to read out. So I'm just going to get this. The backfire effect is an advanced form of the experiment that they did to show confirmation bias. So the confirmation bias experiment was done with functional magnetic resonance imaging, in which they looked at the brains of people while talking about, showing them things that they were interested in, things they agreed with, things they didn't agree with. And they showed that the parts of your brain that are to do with reasoning and logic shut down when you are showed things that don't agree with your worldview. You actually become defensive and you feel like you're under attack. This was bad enough, but the backfire effect makes things worse. Much, much worse. So social scientists Brendan Nyan and Jason Reifel did a further test in which they took 15 Democrats and 15 Republicans, self-identified, strong views. And they gave them an article, and the article was about President Bush's plan to boost revenue by cutting tax. The classic idea that if you cut tax, increased business will pay for that cut and more. So they gave them an article about that. The same article included a corrective statement from the economic report of the president and other official sources claiming that this was implausible. And then after showing them that, they showed the actual tax revenues as a proportion of GDP declined after those tax cuts were implemented. So there's the plan, there's a statement saying it's implausible, and further evidence afterwards that it didn't work. The results are fascinating. After reading the article, the conservatives in the study were still more inclined to believe that tax cuts increase revenue, regardless of reading the correction, regardless of the facts put in front of them. It would appear that once we reach a certain level of bias, we become incapable of changing our minds. That is really, really scary. Really, really scary. And when I look at the amount of division we have in various countries around the world, including our own, I do start to wonder whether we're starting to see the effects of that. So this is a good read, and I highly recommend it. However, this talk isn't largely about social data either, although it is a little bit. So let's just stop for a sec. Blank slide. What am I going to talk about? That's the kind of the why of things. This is the kind of backdrop. This is why I'm worried about things. So what am I talking about? Well, what I want to tell you tonight is what I did about it, just on a personal level. What steps have I taken to try and change this? Because I think, let me go back to this actually. Blaming the providers isn't the right answer. It's like blaming the manufacturers of Krispy Kreme for making us fat, right? It's us that are choosing to consume it. And we have to change that. That's the attitude we have to change. So I thought, well, do we all know Richard Stallman? Yeah, good, good. So Richard Stallman is well known for being incredibly extreme, right? He doesn't fly, he doesn't have a credit card, he won't stay in hotels because he doesn't like being tracked. I'm not that extreme, but I feel a little bit better knowing that someone can do it. So I thought, how can I be extreme? How can I make other people feel better that this is possible, even if they don't want to go down this road? So I thought, how do I cut the big companies out of my life? And which big companies am I talking about? Well, firstly, Apple. That's really easy. I don't own any Apple products. So that's really easy. To be fair, that's a lie. I did have a third generation iPod about 15 years ago, but not a network device, right? So fine. Facebook, that's really easy too. I don't have a Facebook account. Now, as Douglas will be quick to point out, they probably still have masses of indirect data about me, but at least I don't have an account. So there's not a lot more I can do personally here. Microsoft, again, I've been a Linux user since Windows 98. I do have an Xbox, but I haven't used it in about 10 years. And I did have a LinkedIn account, but I deleted it. So that was easy. Amazon, again, fairly easy. As you might have guessed from the home automation comment, I don't use Amazon Echo. I don't have Alexa. I don't use Prime. I don't have a Kindle. It died. And that was a proper Kindle, not a tablet. And I don't use Amazon products at all. I do shop on their site occasionally if I have to, but that's always been my principle for a long time. I know they like to do loss leaders, so I like to buy their expensive stuff and not the cheap stuff that comes afterwards. However, there's one notable exception, right? This one. I have been a Google user for the better part of 20 years, and I thought, how am I going to get rid of that? And I sat and thought about that for quite a long time. And then I came up with a fairly radical plan. I'm going to take Google off my phone. That was my plan. How am I going to get Google off my phone? And this was usually what people's reactions is at this point. Am I not cutting off two of my legs here? Because, quite honestly, an Android phone without Google, how does that even work? Well, actually, to give away the ending, it works pretty well, actually. So, firstly, I needed to root my phone. Rooting my phone is not particularly difficult. You can do it with most handsets these days, as long as you pay attention to which one you're buying. This one is brand new. I only got it a week ago. I've had the last phone I had was a Samsung Galaxy S2, which I had for 6 years, and I updated it every couple of months to the latest version of Android. Yay, community. So, rooting the phone, fairly easy. CyanogenMod, sadly, is dead, but there's LineageOS, so it's all cool. It's the same people. It's the same product. They just had to rename it. So, get LineageOS, put it on your phone. It's fine. It was political because there's a CyanogenMod and there's Cyanogen the company, and they split. And then it got to thinking that, well, we're going to have to change the name eventually. Might as well just do it now. So simple enough. So LineageOS, getting Android onto your phone is not that difficult. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on that. But that was my first step. Now, what's important about this, and the reason I even put it in here, is when you flash an Android ROM, the Google stuff is separate. It's a separate zip file. It's a separate package. So I was like, okay, I'll just not flash it then. That'll work, right? Yes, it will work, and the phone will work, and it will work like a phone. It doesn't do a lot else because you don't have any apps. And so this got me thinking. I was like, well, where am I going to get my apps from? Once again, community to the rescue. There is the F-Droid App Store, which only has open source apps. This is great for me on a philosophical level as an open source community manager. It's also really good for them because they don't have to handle payments. Sneaky. So that's a really great store, and pretty much I would say 90% of the apps I now use come from there. I do sideload a few. There's various APK sites of questionable security. The one that seems to be the most trustworthy is APK Mirror, so I get a few from there that I absolutely have to use. But there is only 2 that I would say are essential, and one of them I would like to get rid of. So I'll tell you if you really want, but later. So F-Droid covers most of my needs. And you think about needs, the basic functionality of a phone, right? Email, chat, social stuff like Twitter, contacts, calendar. I need to get all of that into some other system, right? Because that's all on Google. Contacts, calendar, email, it's all there. Now, I'm going to bypass email completely, and we're not going to talk about email. Partly because it's fairly boring. You set up an email server and you're done. And partly because it's actually fairly easy to work around in the short term. I haven't set up my own email server yet. All my email is still in Google. It is still on the to-do list. But they do offer IMAP, so I don't have to use Google's tooling on the phone. I can just get an IMAP client, and we're good. On the phone level, at least, no Google. Yes, okay, the email problem is still to be solved, but I'll get to that. So email is a bit of a nonsense to talk about, it's fine. But there are a lot of other things. And so I thought, what am I going to start with? What's the easiest one to pick to try and de-Google this? How am I going to handle this? How am I going to get control of this? So, well, Google have what they call Google Takeout, so I can get the data, that's great. Where on earth am I going to put it? I've got some requirements, right? I don't just want it on my phone, that's not enough. I've gotten used to Google's way of doing things. I want it on my tablet as well. I want it in my email client, Thunderbird or Evolution or whatever. It's got to be everywhere. It's got to be easily updatable. It's got to be synced. What am I going to do this? Enter Nextcloud. Anyone know Nextcloud? Some users, good. Nextcloud's fabulous. It's out of the box. It's self-hosted Dropbox, essentially, if you want to think of it that way. It's out of the box, personal cloud to handle file sharing, synchronization, that kind of things. One of its important features, in my opinion, is its federation. So this is where we get onto the topic of decentralization, which I'll talk a bit more about towards the end. The idea is that relying on a single server is what killed off things like Nest, and Google have a really bad history for killing off products they don't want anymore. So in Google's actual, of those 5 I put up earlier, Google is easily the worst offender for just shutting things down that they don't like anymore. So you've got to be a little bit careful with them. So the nice thing about Nextcloud is it's decentralized. I've got an Nextcloud instance, you've got an Nextcloud instance, other people have Nextcloud instances. They can talk to each other. If I need to share a file with someone, that's fine. I can share it directly by a link, or I can share it federated to other Nextcloud servers, and they don't need an account on my Nextcloud server, and that's critical, because having an account on something is what locks you into those systems, right? That's why we have this kind of criticality problem with things like Facebook and Twitter, because people won't move to another platform until enough other people move to that platform, and that's a real pain in the ass. So even without that problem, you've still got the issue of what happens if someone chooses to shut that down. I think, is it still true that Twitter haven't achieved profitability yet? How long is it going to be before they actually shut it down? It could be any time, right? So, federation, really important. I'll come back to that topic. But I stumbled across Nextcloud about a year ago, and it was just at the right time as I was starting to ponder this idea of how do I de-Google my phone. And it turns out that that immediately solves my Google Drive problem, because it's personal file hosting. This is a shot I took this afternoon. There's nothing massively interesting here, but I do want to draw attention to the sharing bit. That's the federation stuff. Also external storages. It can store things wherever you want, S3, and I'm using both NFS and SFTP based storage. As you SFTP, it's a bit of a giveaway. SSH key based. Tons of really nice features, enterprise level stuff. It's really, really nice. But it also has a plugin system. And that's really important. It's got a plugin system, and one of those plugins happens to be contacts, and that did not work at all. That got really stretched. I mean, I broke the image, and I took a screenshot across the top of my widescreen monitor, right? And then I broke it into two pieces, because that never works on a slide. It'd be tiny. But it stretched it a bit too far. Anyway, you get the idea. That's the top of the Nextcloud title bar with lots of different apps up there. So you've got, have I got mouse cursor? No. Files, gallery mode, video calls I'll come back to, and so on. Great. Contacts. Perfect. This is exactly what I needed, right? Import vCards from Google. Brilliant. Nextcloud has an Android app. It has an iOS app. It has a desktop client, although that's just for files. But it's okay, because it also exposes it as a DAV, web DAV endpoint, so you can bring that into Thunderbird or Evolution or whatever. Perfect. Exactly what I needed at exactly the right time. So I spun this up on a server, imported my contacts into it, loved it. Fantastic. Step one done in a course of about 2 days. One to set up Nextcloud, one to import all the vCards. It did require some manual work. It was a bit of a pain fixing up tags and things. But it was there, and it was great, and it was done. Fantastic. Now, calendars. Sorry, I meant to mention DavDroid. So yes, this is what you get when you can't see your notes. Still have to get the contacts onto my phone, right? Nextcloud's great, but the Nextcloud client for Android is only to do with the files side of things. I still have to get the contacts on my phone. Google's not doing that for me anymore. And to DavDroid, now there are a lot of Dav applications for Android, but this is the one recommended by the Nextcloud team. And I have to say, it's really good. It's just exactly what you'd expect. Set it up, give it your credentials, and it syncs the contacts down. Brilliant. I can't really say a lot more about it. It's a really simple and very effective piece of software. Enter calendars. Well, it turns out calendars are exactly the same. There's a plugin for Nextcloud. It's a web DAV endpoint, and it's supported by DavDroid. Job done. Here's my calendar. This screenshot does look a little bit better. Didn't get stretched weirdly. I did have to redact a certain piece of sensitive information. But apart from that, that's my calendar for this week. TechMeetUp down here. So calendar app is really, really nice. You can share it with other users on Nextcloud, although I'm not sure if the federation works with calendars actually. I think it's coming. But also you can deal with all sorts of other things. So you can have ICS files that are synced on a regular schedule and things like that. So you can pull in read-only calendars from the internet and all the things you would expect of a sensible calendar application. I will point out recurrence is a bit wonky, but only if you do it in the web UI. It's just their interface for actually setting up recurrence is really, really basic. So if you just do it on your phone and let it sync it back up to the central server, it works absolutely fine. And it will handle that recurrence and store it properly. It just doesn't give you the tools to edit it correctly on the UI. I think they're working on it, but it's not a very high priority because you can just do it on your client. So contacts, calendar, de-Googled, fantastic. Google does not know who I talk to in theory, but they've still got my email. Or where I am, because they don't have my location data from my phone anymore, right? This is why I'm doing my phone. It's the most sensitive piece of information I own. It's got everything on it. Contacts, calendar, location data, what apps I've got installed, everything. So I've taken some of that away from them. Fantastic. What's next? Social stuff. I've used WebRTC for this one because realistically, that's where the web is going, right? But I used to use Google Hangouts a lot. You know, that's my messaging app of choice, or it was. And if I want to talk, and this is where the criticality problem comes in, because whatever chat system I go to, I need to have my friends there. I can't chat to them, although you can just use SMS for everything, right? But so I had some problems with that, and I don't think I have this one fully solved yet. That criticality thing is really hard to deal with. I have switched to using Signal. I don't know if anyone else is using Signal. Not a big fan of Signal because it's still a central server that might get turned off. I would rather something decentralized, like XMPP is technically a federated protocol, but nobody actually does. So that's a bit of an issue. But it's a tricky one. There is an XMPP app for Nextcloud. They don't have push notifications for the Android app, so it's kind of useless. That's coming, I think. So chat is a bit of an issue. Video calls are easier because you tend to schedule those. Now if I just go back up, here we go. You can see there's a little video icon at the top. So Nextcloud has video stuff built in. It's based on, I don't know if you know SpreadMe. That's what they use internally. But if you want to stand up your own, there's a ton of open source ones. I quite like Jitsi. So that's easy enough to solve. Nextcloud has it built in, or you spin your own up. And the reason that's not a big deal is because video calls don't tend to be very ad hoc, I find. Certainly in my experience over the last sort of 5 years, it tends to be a case of you schedule something and then you go and have the video call. You tend to talk on some other medium first. I never get a call on my phone out of the blue saying, video call, someone's calling you. It just doesn't happen. They'll text me first, or they'll talk to me on IRC, or they'll send me an email and we'll set something up, right? So because of that, this is fine. I can generate a link, send it to them. Guests are absolutely fine on the system. Job done. Not a problem. But chat's a big deal, and I don't have a good answer for that one yet, sadly. I don't have Google Hangouts anymore, obviously. It doesn't work. Signal, I've only just started using because it used to depend on Google Play services for unknown reasons. But it was only at the start of, I think, February this year that they managed to put out a beta version that doesn't use Google Play services, at which point I was like, fantastic, I can use that now. So it'll do for the moment. It's not ideal. So I'm going really quickly. That's what happens when you actually stand up and start talking. Where do I think I'm going to go with this? Well, there's two versions of where am I going with this. The personal version is a fairly easy one to talk about, right? I need to sort out the email. I have no idea what to do about the chat thing. I think that's a cultural shift that has to happen before I can't force people onto another platform, right? So chat is a bit awkward, but I just do everything over email. And my friends have kind of got used to the fact that they can't get me any other way, really. Such is life. It's funny, isn't it, that since I've got a bit of time, I'll tangent. It's funny that nothing has ever replaced email. Everything purports to replace email, and it never actually happens. And I do think it's back to this idea of federation, because it works on protocols and standards. I can have my app and my provider, and I can talk to your app and your provider, because it's all well defined on how to do that. And we just need to modernize that part of it for something else. I don't agree that Slack is a solution, sorry. I've turned down so many Slack invites. But some kind of federated real-time thing that's similar to email would be fantastic. So for me, it's about email, and it's about figuring out what the hell I'm going to do about chat, and also just other little things that I need to sort out, which are not massively interesting. But more generally, where do I think we need to go as a society, as a culture? We need to sort this federation stuff out. We need to decentralize it, because there's the threat of what happens if it's turned off, there's the threat of what happens if it's manipulated, and there's the privacy side of it as well. So I don't believe having all of that data in various places is in our interests. It might be in our interest in the short term. It's definitely not in our interest in the long term. Much the same as eating something fatty tastes really good right now. I mean, you're really going to regret it later, especially if you keep doing it. And I think we need to be more careful and more conscious about how we consume and how we use data. And it is a personal choice. That's the revelation that I've come to over the last month or two. Like, I did this mainly for interest to start with. I wanted to know how bad it was going to be, right? I was like, I'm crippling my phone here. Am I going to be done with this in 3 months and just go, God, no, just reinstall, no, where's my Play Market? But no, actually, it's perfectly fine, and it's perfectly usable, and it's perfectly doable, and it's not that difficult. And if you know anyone with a Nextcloud server, you don't even have to set up your own provider yet. Okay, if you're not running your own, you're just going to move the problem, but it's better at least. So I do think we need to move to a world where I own my data, and I give you, the provider, selective access to that data. And I think that's a much better model. I think it's much better to say, okay, you want to provide me with a service, Amazon, fantastic. Well, what permissions do you need to do that? We see this all the time with OAuth applications now, but it's about services talking to other services instead of you talking to me to get access to my data. And that's what I want to see. I want to see me holding the data and you asking for access to it. And that, I'm starting to see little moves towards this. I saw a blog post about someone who'd been writing a WebDAV library for JavaScript that could then store things that it needed. Instead of storing it on some server, would store it in your DAV share, wherever that might be. And of course, it's primarily aimed at Nextcloud, It doesn't have to be Nextcloud. And I think that's exactly where we need to be, to get that kind of, here's my app, and here's what I need to do. I need to store something, but I'm going to store it on you, the user's platform. That's beautiful. And we need more of that kind of thing, more federation and more storing of our own data. And that, I think, is where we need to get to. So with that, I'll point out that I do still use Twitter. Sorry. There are some things you just can't give up, right? But it's all public anyway, so it's really not a big deal. However, I've just started playing Mastodon, which is a decentralized version of Twitter. Really nice. If you're using Mastodon, please let me know your IDs and I'll add you. And I do use Diaspora instead of Facebook. I don't say a lot, but it's quite a nice platform. It's quite fun. And that's my domain. If you want to email me, anything will get to me. So thank you very much.
Questions?
So you said you're basically focusing on removing the big five companies from the line as much as possible. And I can see the logic behind that, but are you also trying to remove other companies as well? Are you trying to go entirely open source?
I think whenever so yes, the answer, do I want to go entirely open source or self-hosted? Yes, where possible, is absolutely the answer. I should repeat the question, I guess, because I've got a microphone and you haven't. So the question was, okay, the big five is logical, but what about other systems? Yes, I would like to go self-hosted where possible. It isn't always possible, but at least when I'm opening an account on something, my first thought is, what's going to happen when they shut it down? That's pretty much my first thought these days is, what's the lifespan of this? What are they doing with the data? And I won't open the account if I'm not happy with it, because it is that trade-off, and we need to be more conscious about how we consume things. Simply opening an account because it's free isn't acceptable, in my opinion. So it depends, I'm guessing, it felt like a slightly loaded question. I don't know if there's certain services you're interested in knowing more about, but that's my sort of general feeling. I will admit there is one proprietary system I do use, but it's self-hosted, so yeah, that's fine. That's one of the apps I was talking about. I use Plex Media Server, which is fabulous, but at least I run that locally. So.
Yeah, just I'm not actually sure how other processes work like Bitcoin. I've never had much experience with it, but I wondered if, in terms of banking and your money, if the same model might be a future for having your money federated rather than within a certain banking system or whatever.
True. So I have probably as little experience on the financial side as you say you do. I'm not big on that area either, but it does feel like the financial industry right now, I hear, is very, very interested in blockchain stuff right now. And having that kind of public record of transactions is very interesting to them, right? And I think that, and I've heard talked about more things going towards blockchain as well. So not my area of expertise, but if that's the case, then yeah, I could see that being an interesting avenue, but I don't really know a lot about it. Right now, I don't see there's a lot of options on banking. I don't really have a choice. But equally, they don't. It depends whether you have everything with one bank, right, or whether you spread it out. But if you spread it out a bit, then any one given bank doesn't know a huge amount about you. They just know what you buy. Or no, even less than that, they know what purchases you made and what the merchant chose to put on the bill, right? And a lot of the time, those things are indecipherable. How many times have you looked at your bank statements and gone, what the hell was that? You're chasing back in your head going, where was I that day? I don't know about you, I have a terrible memory. There's Alzheimer's runs in my family and this kind of thing. I have a great memory for data and rules and languages and things. And for what I was doing yesterday, no chance. So I look at my bank statements and I've got no idea. And if they have even less knowledge about me than that, then most of the bank statements are useless information, right? So. Who's going to get the mic? Oh, unlucky.
How easy do you find it to make it so that you're not shut down yourself? Because when you're setting up your service, you could lose all of your data if you make a mistake or if someone break your stuff.
So, firstly, I'm a sysadmin by background. That helps. Nobody cares enough about backups. I learned that a long time ago. So all my data is backed up, and it is self-hosted, properly self-hosted. It runs in my house. It runs on it's a system single board computer. It's an Odroid C2, and there's a JBoard disk array next to it that's mounted by NFS for the big storage like photos and things. And all of that is backed up nightly. Now, if I lose the RAID array, yeah, I'm kind of stuffed, but that's why it's RAID 5, right? And then if I lose a disk, I can replace it. But that's because I have that knowledge. Now, you're right, that's not easy to set up out of the box, and you need specialist knowledge. I do think there's a market for improving that area. I know Debian were working on the Freedom Box project, which had a lot of good moves in that direction. And I think making it easy for an end user to spin this up. I mean, Nextcloud are working on this as well. They will sell you a box with a Raspberry Pi in it and a 1 terabyte hard drive with Nextcloud already on it and in a nice little package and everything. That doesn't help you with redundancy if you lose that drive, but it's a step in the right direction. But you're right, it's non-trivial to get up and running if you don't have specialist knowledge. So there's moves to be made there, sure.
Sorry. It's good to confirm that you can actually run an Android phone without a Google account. I can't personally because I just need to get on the market straight away to just get one crappy app or something. And I presume on an iPhone you always have to have an iCloud account.
About iPhones,
okay, that's no problem. What do you think about having then a sort of Linux type, or not Linux necessarily, but an open source phone OS that has all the stuff without the market, all federated, let's say?
Yeah, so this is interesting because this was attempted a number of times, right? Ubuntu tried to do this. Mozilla, I think one of the members of this parish who's moved on, Dale Harvey, was working on Firefox OS. It doesn't ever seem to take. There seems to be, again, this criticality problem of getting people onto a particular platform. We could debate endlessly whether Android counts as open source. It might not, depending on how strict you want to be with the philosophy of it. But you're absolutely right that yes, you can run it without Google. But you make a really interesting point about the marketplace. Can I beg all developers of mobile apps, can you put an APK somewhere on your website? It takes 2 minutes to put a link somewhere, right? And you'll make my life a lot easier. Or if you want to get really fancy, put an F-Droid repo up. F-Droid is basically apt or yum for your phone. It's a repository manager. You can add more URLs. So one of the apps I use is for geocaching. They have their own F-Droid repo. There's only one app in it, but they have their own F-Droid repo so that they can control it. Genius. Let's see more of that, in my opinion. I think that would be fantastic. And then I have this problem at conferences. Every conference you go to, it's like, oh, just download our app for the schedule. Thanks. Put it on the website.
Would Red Hat ever make...
I don't think that's likely. I don't think that's likely. They're on record as being not too worried about the desktop market, never mind the mobile market. So whether we leapfrog and just forget about desktop, I don't know. But our business is in enabling people to do work, right, and that's server OSs.
So with part of this talk being about what people are doing with your data and where that is, did you hear about the scan done by Nextcloud of all the Nextclouds running at Christmas, which they then gave the data to the government, who then gave it to the ISPs, who then turned around and went, hey, you're not supposed to be running a service.
Did they?
On your
I didn't realise they'd given it to government.
Yeah, they gave it to the shadow cabinet.
Which government?
All of them. There's people
Because they're German companies.
Those people in the Germany and the UK got letters from their ISP saying, why are you running services?
Interesting. I did not hear about that. Thank you for the information. But nonetheless, but how would they find the Nextcloud instances? That's the question.
Because they report back to Nextcloud.
They don't.
There was a scanner. There's a scanner.
There is scan.nextcloud.com, but you choose to go and use it.
Well, they automatically ran it against all the Nextcloud instances. The reason for it was to find which ones hadn't updated properly.
No. So okay, no. I need to jump in here. I know about that website because I've used it as well, but I'm pretty sure they don't phone home, because I'd probably notice. but no. I mean, I have used that tool. I chose to go and put my URL into it, sure. And if you did that, they've got a log of it. And obviously they're pushing that really, really hard because they want to know how secure Nextcloud is, right? But does it phone home? I don't think so.
Maybe not.
If it does, they're going to be in trouble.
I'm sure they ran it without anybody's knowledge before that.
Interesting.
Before people actually connected. They were looking for people who hadn't updated.
Yeah, and
So
they're
probably using the data from the update URL update and saying who's.
No, but updates are manual though.
I don't know.
You have to trigger them. So yeah, it's worth checking out though, absolutely.
Someone else? No, that's it.
All right, thank you very much. Check that.
Okay, there'll be 10 minutes and then we'll have our next talk on how you can get a spiffingly wonderful job.
Thanks very much. Cool. Thanks for letting me use the remote mic. That's much better for me.
Yeah, thanks.
Right.
going to get my recruiters coming up to me saying,
Okay, our second talk is by Calvin and Ruaridh from Head Resourcing.
Okay. No applause. Whoa. No, we're from Head Resourcing. Oh, we didn't want to force it. Don't want to force it. No, I'm Calvin from Head Resourcing, and my colleague Ruaridh.
Hi, I'm Ruaridh, and today we were here last month. That was our first time here, and we were having a chat with Marius here just about what we could maybe sort of do for you guys, and if we could do a talk or something. So we thought we'd come along and do a talk about the sort of the market just now, and a little bit about how to just sort of how to like format CVs and things, and any help that we can sort of provide. So the agenda for today is we'll sort of introduce ourselves a little bit and our company, what we do. Then Calvin will talk a bit about the most recruited skills in Scotland last year and the technology trends and what to do when you're looking for a new role. Then I'll do a little bit on how to approach the market and what can make a CV stand out. Then we'll go through some of the companies that we work with who are hiring and whatnot, and we'll open the floor to any questions that you guys have. So who we are, we're Head Resourcing, first off. We are one of the leading IT, digital and business change consultancies in Scotland. Our core business is financial services and tech industries. Coverage across the UK, so we are based just down on Manor Place, just near Haymarket, in Edinburgh, and in Leeds we're also based, we've got an office down in the city centre there as well. Primarily we do contract and permanent, so myself, Calvin and our colleague Lyle here, we do permanent recruitment. We also have a dedicated contract team for anyone who's interested in contracting. We've also been known to do interim fixed term contract and senior appointments, but we mostly focus on contract and permanent. So we are obviously based in Edinburgh, we've got an office in Leeds, but we, on the permanent side, we mostly work in Stirling, Glasgow and Edinburgh. But on the contract side, we work throughout the UK, and today we actually had a role come through in Holland. So we're breaking through in Europe now as well. And these here are some of the forums that our senior directors are on the board with and are a part of. We're trying to branch out as much as possible. As you can see, we're working with some great forums there as well.
So Marius kindly sent through some questions that have kind of come up at previous meetups. So this is from last year. This was the main skills recruited in Scotland. So as you can see, software development and solution implementation still lead the way across all industries, whether it be financial services, technology, public sector. It's still the most in demand. Then you've got client interface, and then you go down and you can see again the IT comes back into it with architecture, service management and data skills. This year, we've been asked, what have we seen the big rise in? Most things we see on our desks, Java, C#, AngularJS, there's been a big rise. Big data, we cannot find enough people for that. Same with security, Splunk, no one wants that role. DevOps as well, huge increase in people working at DevOps methodology, and iOS developers, they've always been rare from day one. So the digital technologies industry generates over 5 billion gross value for Scotland every year and is becoming more and more important in our increasingly digital world. Along the bottom, you've got the languages that this is taken from June this year. So this is the current, what they're looking to recruit the most in Scotland. So this is giving you an idea of what technologies are the most in demand. So if you're looking for a new role, what is it you're looking for? So what motivates you is the first question we'll ask anyone. Is it you want career progression? Are you looking to join a company where there's a clear path where you can advance? Is it you want to work with the latest technology? We learn new technologies every day. It's part of our job. Work-life balance. Maybe you've got a young family. Maybe you want to have a bit more remote working. I've heard a few people here work fully remote. That's important to them. So maybe they're willing to take a salary sacrifice on the basis they can work from home every day. Or is it money? Is it quite simply the fact that you're looking to progress your career value and that is the most important driver for you? Or it could be to do with the benefits package you get. A lot of people want to work for software companies. They're not going to be able to give you the big package that a finance client will, even though you'll still be a Java developer at the end of the day. So it's about summarising what's important to you and where do you want your day-to-day life to be. So if you're looking for salary information, you've got a couple of websites you can use. So you've got IT Job Watch. That's what we use as references as well for our clients. We consult on both sides. We consult you as candidates. We consult our clients on their side about what salaries they should be offering you. And you've got Glassdoor as well. Remember with Glassdoor, take it with a pinch of salt. No one ever leaves a good review. You know, if there's 10 reviews saying they're bad, there's also 100 people who haven't moved on in 5 years. So permanent or contract opportunities, upside, downside. You know, everyone goes, I want to be a contractor, I want to make big money, or it's about, I want to do project work. That's cool. Permanent, you've got some better options there with the side of training, career progression. It's easier to progress in a role. You have a bit more stability. You're contracting again, you could be relocating across the country. You know, we speak to a lot of contractors who are saying, I only want to work in this place. They're shutting down their market massively, you know, unless they're open to looking at multiple locations. And then again, these are a couple of quotes from the IHS market report in the UK from this month. So in permanent, the top one, we've seen a big sharp rise again this year. It's now its steepest growth for more people looking for work, more people going into new jobs since February 2015. And the contract side, this again, it's the biggest billings since August 2014. So the market is very driven at the moment. There's a lot of movement. It's down to multiple factors.
So approaching the market. So these are just some of the sort of things that you want to be looking at when, you know, if you're a graduate coming out of university looking for a new job, or if you've been in a job for a while and you've not approached the market in some time, you know, these are some things you want to take into account. Now, recruitment agencies, obviously we're going to open with that. So the reason to approach recruitment agencies, there's a lot of reasons, you know. First off, we can offer a lot more than just, you know, what you expect. There's a lot of interview prep. There's a lot of we can offer mock interviews. We can walk you through the interview process. We can do all that, give you as much sort of knowledge as you can get. Engagement, we can engage with clients. So we have obviously a wealth of clients that we work with, but not just that. We also have contacts throughout the industry as a whole. From, you know, people moving throughout jobs, you know, you place people, you keep in contact, things like that. It's a great way to introduce you to people within the market, you know, companies that you might want to work with, things like that. Guidance, again, this can be anything. This can be, even if you're not looking for a job at the moment, even if, you know, you just want some guidance. I mean, after all, our job title is consultant, so we're there to, you know, consult. If you want some CV guidance, if you want some market reference, you can always just, you know, come in, pop in and sort of have a chat. And management, yeah, again, just as mentioned before, you know, we can sort of provide management throughout the whole process and help when needed. Your public profile, now this is important, so you want to remain as professional as possible throughout all of this, because obviously people are going to look at it. Social media, you know, you want to just keep it up to date, you know, keep it, you know, relevant to what you are interested in. Twitter, you know, that's a surprisingly good use actually for following companies, getting updates, things like that. Email address and contact numbers. Now, when you've got your CV online, you know, you probably want to keep these up to date. I realise this is a bit ironic after the first talk, but so, you know, you're going to want to keep those up to date because people are going to want to get in touch with you, you know. And GitHub as well. So if you have a GitHub, link it to your LinkedIn, link it to your CV. If you don't have one, it is a sort of great way to show off your portfolio, you know, and we're seeing more and more clients actually now sort of referencing it and asking for it and seeing if people have them. So if you are a developer and have a GitHub, it's quite worthwhile putting that up as well. LinkedIn is great for you for like a number of reasons. So it's great in the sense that, you know, again, you can follow companies, you can see what they're up to, you can see what roles that, you know, if there's a company you really like and you'd really like to work for, you know, you can follow them, see what jobs they've got going. You can see what's going on with the market. There's a lot of stuff to follow, groups. There's also a job search function. So again, you can like apply directly, things like that. Also great for contacts as well. So, you know, you can link in with people. You know, it's not the same as like Facebook or anything. You don't really have to be friends with them. It's like if you're in the same, you know, field as them, you can always just connect with them and see what's going on. It's great as well to show off more than just what your CV gives you. You can get recommendations, you can show your skill set, you can talk, you know, the groups you follow show up, so it shows what interests you have. It really like sort of fleshes out more than just what a CV can give. Job sites, so this is what we use most, I would say, as recruiters, and what hiring managers will use most to find new people on the market. So amongst these ones here, you've got S1 Jobs, JobSite, Total Jobs, Monster, Reed, and JobServe. There are more out there. If you put your CV on, you know, 2 or 3 of these, you're pretty much covered all of Scotland in terms of, you know, where you're going, and it's what we as recruiters use. And, you know, it's a great way to get your CV out there. And again, if it's an up-to-date CV with up-to-date contact information, you will be contacted by someone who will be looking to help. Job boards as well, again, for searching for jobs, you know, a lot of these have job boards built into them. These are like CV databases, but they have job search functions. Employer sites as well, again, as mentioned before with LinkedIn, if there is a particular company you want to work for, they might not always put them on job boards. So if you do, just check their website every now and then, see if there's any roles they've got. Again, it's all about if you want to work for a particular company. Referrals, again, if you know someone that works in a certain industry and they can refer you, that's a great way to get in because it gets you that extra foot in the door. And again, it's something that we can provide in that same way as well. Obviously we know people throughout the industry, and if there's a company you want to work for, you don't know how to approach them, come to us because it's something that's what we do is we help people find what they're looking for essentially. Right, so yeah, what makes a CV stand out? So the first thing that anyone's going to read on your CV is the profile summary. That's at the top. So you're going to want this concise and to the point. You're going to want people to read on as well. So the main things to have in this, I would say personally, are things like what you would call yourself. If you're a developer, if you're a project manager, what your next role what you want to have get from your next role, how many years experience you've got, the industries you've worked in, what you would call yourself, and just a little bit about yourself, maybe some of the achievements you've got, just short, concise, make people really want to read on, because that's, again, as I said, it's the first things at the top of your CV. Contact details, again, up to date so that people can get in touch with you. That's straightforward. Also, it's not there, but an address, that's something that seems to be coming off of CVs, but it's actually, in terms of people getting in touch with you, it's fairly important because if you're doing a search for people within an area, if your address is on there, then that means we know what area you're in. If you don't have your address on it, you could be anywhere. If there's a great job comes up in Edinburgh, but we don't know you live in Edinburgh, then that's so. If you're that way inclined, the address is great to have on there. Clear skill set listed and proficiency with each skill. Now this is really important because a lot of people will, especially when you work with a lot of skills and you're writing a CV, you just want to get it from here onto the page, so you'll just write every skill you've got. But it's quite important to make sure that because you'll get contacted about jobs that you're not as proficient in. You might have one at the bottom that people will contact you on. You really want your top skills to be at the top, maybe how many years you've worked with it, or even like a 1 to 5 ranking system. You can have a key or something just to show which skills are you're most efficient with. Detailed information on projects worked on. Again, this ties into it. So if you've worked on a project, say for example with C#, it was a particularly interesting one, either a particularly difficult one, you achieved something really great with it, detail it on your CV. There's no reason not to show that. And again, it's something that you'll get asked questions on in an interview, so it's great to have that. Technology used within, of course, methodologies used, because again, waterfall, agile, things like that, we're getting asked a lot more about. So, if you've worked with a particularly interesting one, say one that's not bog standard agile or waterfall, mention it, And team size, again, it's great because it shows how much contribution you had, things like that, and achievements, as I mentioned. It's great to show that because, you want to show pride in it, you want to show what you've achieved with it, what you contributed to. For example, if you made a great app that went on to sell loads or whatever, or it was reached a massive audience, mention that in your CV because that might be the difference between you and someone else that's applying for the role. Clearly formatted. So when we send CVs off to clients, we'll send it in a Word doc, black and white. So that's really what you want to see. It's great to make your CV stand out, but the best way to make your CV stand out really is to show the work you've done, is to really go and show pride in your work and get extensive about it, talk about it. If it's going to stand out sort of image-wise, and if you're going to format it differently, really when it comes to sending it to clients, or when it comes to hiring managers reading it, it probably will not stand out as much, really. You want Word document, black and white, straightforward, easy to read as well. And tailor your CV as well. So if you've got a number of positions you could work, say you've just come out of university and you've worked with a number of different technologies, you don't know which one you want for your next job, have a CV for each, because each project, have CVs with different projects on it. One, say that there was a great Java project you worked on, have a CV focused on that. Say there was a C#, whatever as before, focus it on that as well. That way you're really focusing it on the job at hand. Tailor your CV to each job that you're going for.
So these are some of the companies we work with. We work with a mixture of financial services, software houses. Again, it's about us consulting. We consult on both sides. We represent you in the best way we can, and we also advise them on what they should be seeing in the market. There are companies we don't work with that we can approach on your behalf because we may be talking to them anyway, even though we don't actively recruit for them on a daily basis. We can take you forward and represent you just basically helping you get your foot in the door to open a conversation. Just today, we put a developer forward this afternoon at 2 o'clock. He's going on holiday on Friday. He has an interview tomorrow because they want to see him. So we can speed the process up. We can help you to get in because it's in your best interest, our best interest, and the client's best interests. So at that point, we're happy to take some questions.
I'm really interested in the recruitment industry, in fact, how it might change or whatever, or federate, let's say. But what I was wondering is, do you know how many jobs there are, maybe each year, landed in Scotland, and how many of them are done through recruiters, let's call them? How many are done just, word of mouth?
Word of mouth.
Nepotism.
Nepotism. Wow.
Right, yeah.
What a heavy first question. Thousands. There's literally thousands. I mean, there are some accounts where we'll work exclusively with clients, so we'll be the only supplier to them. A couple of clients we had up there. There's others where we work with 70 agencies on the account, depending on their size and things. So the market can obviously, a lot of companies, like we're in one, they've got a really big in-house team here, so they'll do a lot of recruitment themselves. But then when it comes to those niche skill sets, and we have to go and look at the market and look elsewhere, that we're not going to find someone sitting about twiddling their thumbs that's a Hadoop specialist, that's when they generally come to us and we have to look a bit harder.
Do you think there's more, let's say, market, for your services, or?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, no, I mean, as you've seen, software jobs in Scotland are growing. So, we focus on IT, digital and business change. So for us, this just currently right now, we've never been busy in this period of the year as we have been before in the history of the company. Usually hiring managers go on holiday, but we're breaking records at the moment. So it's good for us in the sense of we're making loads of people happy, we're getting them new jobs. But it's getting busier and busier as more people want technology.
The guy told me on Friday, it's quite funny, sorry.
It wasn't working.
He said some people he lands, they only stay a week in the jobs, which made us laugh. Is that true?
Right, well, that wouldn't be very good recruitment because you're not getting the person the right. You're not. It's not just this person's free and this job's open. Let's match it up. So much more to it than that, and that's what we're sort of trying to get across. Is I think it's more of a slapdash job. Maybe this one.
It's amazing that people will just change jobs or take a job. Maybe it helps if you already have a job, to leave. Then you're sure about it.
Yeah, well, I mean, if you look at after the financial crisis, the contract market really boomed. A lot of people jumped around, short contracts, 3 months. It slowed down a bit a couple of years later. They've then found it hard to transition back into permanent because the permanent hiring managers were always concerned, what if a contract comes up, will they jump because there's more money? So yeah, we will always advise people, I know someone who was with a company for a while, he's taken a gamble in another company, he's not enjoying it, he's wanting to leave after 4 months. So I've said to him, you need to make sure the next move's a good one because you want to put a bit more stability back into your career. You don't want to end up with a choppy CV.
I have multiple questions. I'll start with the first one. The strategy risk group did some research and they found 63% of CVs have lies on them. How do you write a CV if you're honest to make it stand out from the liars?
Do you want to take this one? You take this one.
So, and obviously we can only answer this on a recruiter side. The liars are quite easy to spot. You talk to them, you go through things, and see when you're getting someone who can't talk. Because obviously we flesh out as much detail as we can because obviously we're representing you. We want to make sure that this person is the right person for this role for everyone involved. We don't want to look foolish putting someone in front and then they go to interview, get asked a question and can't answer it. The liars get found out very easily. In terms of how to make it stand out, if someone's going to lie about having been Steve Jobs' understudy or whatever, I don't know. It's going to be difficult to obviously to do like better than that. But obviously, if you coming to us and think, and I don't really know, in all honesty.
I think the most important thing is, as a recruiter, what we do is we will telephone interview you ourselves, so we'll speak with you extensively before submitting your CV. We never submit anyone without putting their CV forward. I know you hear that off every agency, but it's true. We will also meet with you before submitting you, if possible. If not, we will submit your CV if there's a deadline, and then we'll arrange to meet you for a coffee. We don't mind if we take you out to Starbucks, buy you a coffee, or you want to pop in after work and see us, but we will meet with the people, because at the end of the day, we're representing you to our clients, and we want to do a good job on both sides.
63% of people might get the job, but they'll get found out. Like beyond interview stage, once they're put into a role, that's when you get found out, and it's through the sort of the process of the the mock interviews and they're really going through your CV and chatting to people that's if you come through a recruitment agency, that's where you'll find that you'll get put forward by us over people who are lies, because you find it out so easily when you start chatting to them and they're umming and on over simple questions that even we know answers to. That's when you find, right, okay, this person's not the right person to put forward. The person who quite clearly knows what we're talking about is the person to put forward.
It's not actually a good question, but is because it's 60% were out and out lies, or were they embellishments?
Lies.
Lies. That's
I have a question. Let's say you get your dream role. What to do to start avoiding people calling you regarding roles?
Okay, this is a good one.
Speak to the first guy.
So, refer to the first talk, and then that's the easiest way. No, but seriously, with regards to job boards, you update your CV and you put them on it, it refreshes. The first thing we do is we search within the first week, then we go a month, and then we'll keep going back until we keep finding the candidates we need, because maybe you put your CV on 2 years ago, but you're a bit bored now, so we will call you. So the one thing I'll advise is when I do get ratty people on the phone that are like, I'm not interested, stop calling me, make it clear. Take your CV off a job board. You don't leave it up there. If you do not want to be contacted, take it down. Put on your LinkedIn, I'm happy in my role. That's fine. We're not willing to hassle people. We want to speak to people who maybe don't know how to look, or they're a bit reserved about coming forward. They're worried about putting their CV out there in case their boss sees it, whatever. We're happy to help in that situation. If you're happy in your role, we're happy. It saves us time as well.
So just, remove from job boards, and if any of them do phone you, there's a chance that you're probably on their database. So just say, can you remove me from the database, or I'm happy in my role, I'll contact you when I'm not. And then, if they continue contacting you, they're not a respectable agency, really, because if anyone says that to us, the first thing you do is just, you make a note of it. You say, right, this person wants removed from a database, you remove them. Remove yourself from the job boards. It should, it should stop fairly easily, hopefully. Yeah.
Okay, so my question is, a few years ago I worked for a job that was a 3-day-a-week job.
Mm-hmm.
The next contract was a couple of months. The one after that I worked full-time, but I would invoice the number of hours I did, so it was quite quiet. I would leave at 2 o'clock and charge them for 6 hours. So a lot of contracts seem to want you 5 days a week, 8 hours, no matter how busy you are. And some contracts I've been very quiet, sat twiddling my thumbs for days on end. What's the market like for getting part-time or flexible hour roles like in Edinburgh these days?
I mean, in terms of the contract market that we see, to be honest, it is mostly sort of 5 days a week. There is flexibility in terms of hours because of the new law changes that are coming in. Particularly, I mean, we don't work much in the public sector, but you'll find that will change a lot in the public sector because they don't want you working as I take it about IR35, they don't want you working as a full-time employee on a contract. In terms of, there is always flexibility because what our contracts will state is how many days to do and how many hours to do. They don't say 9 to 5, they don't say this. So in terms of that, as long as you meet your hours, really it should be fine. But that really is case-by-case basis, depending on the client. And so none of our contracts will say what hours you have to do. Like that's not, because that just doesn't make any sense because you'd just be as well being a full-time employee. But what they'll do is it'll be a case-by-case basis, depending on the role you're doing, depending on the company you're working for. That would all be sort of fleshed out during interview process, during application process.
There was one website, to me, was a glaring omission next to GitHub, and LinkedIn was Stack Overflow. Do you guys not rate it?
I've never been asked about it by a client.
Yeah, I mean, would you recommend it?
If someone's got a history
Yeah.
of errors, it's great.
Okay.
I mean,
yeah.
really,
No, cool. I mean, that's it. We need to, we can now educate clients as well. I mean, GitHub is obviously probably the most well known, so that's one we would get asked for the most. We ourselves will say, do you have anything we can use to support your CV? And we'll ask for GitHub. But I can honestly say I've never asked for Stack Overflow, so I'll do that in future.
GitHub's one we've been asked more and more recently by our clients. I guess they're just sort of catching up on it as we are. If you have any sort of website that has a portfolio of your work on it, we won't just limiting it to those ones there. If you can show your work. That's really going to help, bolster your application.
So I'm currently full-time-ish. I'm working 4 days a week,
Okay.
And it's something I'd like to keep up. If I was going to look for another job, how would I approach that being one of the things that I want to keep up, and how easy would it be in the current market?
So are you contracting or are you permanent?
I'm full-time.
Full-time. I mean, it's as we mentioned before, sort of approaching the market. So it depends. If you know companies you want to work for, look on their website. If you know companies, follow them on LinkedIn, see if there's any roles that they have coming up. If not, come and speak to recruitment agencies, because they, like ourselves, if there's a company you want to work for, we might know someone in the team. We will be able to get in touch with their sort of recruitment agencies. You can speculatively sort of put people forward and say, look, this guy really wants to work for you. If you've got any opportunities open, let us know. And people will, they will move stuff around if it's, if they need what you've got, kind of thing. In terms of if you're just looking for a new role, again, we have, the best bet is to come to us, because we can show you the market and whatnot. But again, it's, it's job boards, it's LinkedIn, it's doing the searches on, because if you've got some keywords, I mean, what is it you do? Sorry.
Yeah, I mean, I'm developing C++, but I'm mostly focused on the 4 days.
Oh, right, okay, you want to keep that. All right,
Yes.
okay. Well, yeah, right. Sorry, I totally misinterpreted that question, sorry. I mean, that's, well...
C++, we have a totally remote role at the moment. Kevin does, just to put that in there. So yeah, totally remote. Yeah, just as you said that. Yeah, there you go.
The 4 days thing is a case-by-case basis, and usually you need to embed yourself within a role, and then there generally is flexibility. So it's not that common, I'll be honest, but again, it is more on a kind of case-by-case basis.
Smaller clients may be more open to it as well. Again, after you sort of, it's difficult from day one, but 3-6 months down the line, once you've proven yourself, that's when you start having those conversations. And if you say it from day one, it's something you're looking for, they'll sort of make note of that, and maybe further down the line, that's when they'll go, right, okay, now once you've got your sort of feet under the table, that's when you start sort of seeing those payoffs, if that's something you're really keen on.
If you're interested, administrators do work for 4 days but pay you for 5.
Yeah, that's true, actually. Yeah, administrators do that.
Would you say the market is as liquid at all experience levels, or do you find that companies are more interested in, say, 5 to 10 year kind of level experience?
So, I mean, in the sort of software side, in terms of what we see as our company, we see more sort of senior roles, 5 to 10 years. But that's not to say that it's not as buoyant as there's other agencies out there, and we have been seeing more and more of sort of companies that are sort of looking to take in graduates and work them up, because especially on the sort of software development side, as you're seeing, it's like 70% is what they're looking for, but there's not masses in the market, so they're starting to see a lot more flexibility in terms of what they'll accept. So
what about the other end, where you've got folk with maybe 15, 20 years experience in the industry at large, maybe in different technology areas, but who are in the kind of mid to late end of their career? Are there still plenty of jobs there, or are you generally looking at going down a kind of 10-year level experience?
No, I mean, well, one, we believe in diversity, so we would always cut your CV. I'd recommend you cut it to show your relevant work. No one wants to read 10 pages, and they won't get that far anyway. So, we do have sort of spectrums where we need to take CVs to. But yeah, I mean, if you have the skill set in Scotland, you've seen the demand. It is possible. We are non-diverse completely, so maybe some clients wouldn't be, but we have no control over that. But we would always represent anyone at any skill level for a role that they were suited to. If we believe they can do it and they're a good candidate for the role, then we'll put them forward.
Okay, but kind of reading between the lines, there's probably fewer of those jobs just kind of floating around.
Do you mean like senior level jobs?
Yeah,
senior.
it's kind of just wondering what it's like when if you are more experienced.
We've had a fair few senior level jobs through actually that are quite well paid, and there's not many people who've got the relevant experience they're looking for. So in terms of what we've seen, maybe in the past, say like 3 months, we've seen more roles than candidates, I would say.
Yeah, I mean, I
Senior
think
level.
I think a lot of people they progress after that time period. We don't see many developers that just want to stay developers. You know, if that's what you want to do, you want to be a hands-on just developer, that's cool. But a lot of people then they'll say, you know, maybe I want to progress into being a scrum master or an architect, or you know, go on to
Project
be
manager,
CTO, etc. So we do place that, but that's not for everyone. So if you are just wanting to do senior development, then we do get senior developer roles.
Yeah, it depends. 10, 15 years, yeah, people will sort of progress onwards, as Calvin said. It just totally depends. But no, there is definitely still a market for people with that level of experience.
Right, so you kind of touched a bit on that, like that, you know, like you do development for so many years and then you want to see where you could go next. And I guess for some people, one kind of track is management, or like, I don't know, for example, I would like eventually to do engineering management and things like that. And how would you kind of see that happening, or like, how would you advise someone who's like, let's say like I'd like to, I don't know, change from what I'm doing now to like move into, I don't know if it's a lateral move or what you'd call it, but into a senior into a like engineering management role or something like that. How would that work? How would you recommend that someone goes about doing that?
It's a tough one. I mean, it depends on where you're looking to go. You know, not everyone's different. You know, some people absolutely adore agile and stuff. Other ones don't. Everyone hates it. You know, but for that example, you know, you would say you wanted to progress to being a scrum master. You were a dev team lead. You know, you'd want to lead your team in an agile way to prove that, you know, you have that sort of scrum experience. You know, then you'd maybe want to see if the current company you were in could get you in a course to certify you. If you can't, maybe do it yourself, distance learning. Where you can go to somewhere in Edinburgh and do the exam. Perfect, then you're certified. You know, and then you can sort of take that step. I mean, I think the thing is time moves. It's just going to constantly keep going in a cycle. Some places offer you quite interesting roles, like Tesco Bank have got a role which is quite niche, where it's between an architect and like maybe a senior business analyst or a scrum master. So you get to do a bit of low-level design, and then the next step for that is to go up into being a solution architect. So that's quite an interesting. So you want to look at companies that can do that, and that's one of the benefits of talking to us is you guys will see a job ad on S1 Jobs. We know the kind of organizational structure of these companies, so we can help point you in the right direction, even if it's not through us, on where the companies you want to look at to go to progress.
On top of that as well, it depends on the movement you're looking to make in terms of contract and permanent. So if you're in like a permanent role with a company, the movement is a lot easier, I would say, because, you know, you're again, it's the feet under the table thing. It's the trust that you've built. With contracting, they have a role and they need that role filled by someone who can do it. So if you've got this experience doing this thing and you want to try this thing, the move across, there's someone who might have this. So moving across is quite difficult unless, as Calvin said, you do the certifications, do the Prince 2, whatever it is, you know. And moving across can be quite difficult. It's not totally impossible, but yeah, in terms of permanent, it's a lot easier in that route because you'll have. Did you have a follow-up?
Would you say that, for example, it would be easier as a permanent employee to make the transition while you're at a company you've been in for a while?
I would
like
personally.
Get a bit of experience and then.
I would say they would be more open to it, yeah, because you've shown the trust that you can do things, and they'll internally train you as well. And if you so say you're working as A and there's a role opening in B, and you tell them I want to do this, they'll more likely to help you train towards doing that. And then once you're there, you know, you've now got that experience in that role, and you could do it for a while, and then sort of look at other opportunities. With contracting, as I said, you know, they're going to want someone who's already got it. In a lot of cases, not every case. So I'm not, you know, bad-mouthing contracting or anything. There are opportunities there where they'll want to get people in and maybe, you know, help them with that. But in terms of permanent, there's a lot of internal training, and there's that trust already built because you've worked with them for a while.
So I have one question. I'm spoiled, right? I work 100% of my time on an open source project, and I love that. I really love that. If I were hypothetically to be looking for work,
Yes.
what's the market temperature for working in the open at the moment? How often do you see people working out there, committing their code to GitHub on a daily basis, and not doing too much on the proprietary side?
I couldn't really hear that. I'm sorry.
Yeah, sorry.
Open source employers.
Open source employers.
We don't see much of it, in all honesty.
No.
A lot of the companies we'll work with, well, it's not as much open source. We occasionally get roles through where people will need sort of like Python and things like that, and maybe Ruby on Rails, but not as much in terms of like a full open source role. Just because of I think it's mostly because of the type of clients we work with. Large technology and financial services. Open source just hasn't really sort of got into those. Yeah.
I guess you see a bit more of it on the kind of, it's starting to filter into the kind of DevOps side a bit. They're wanting people with the sort of Linux systems admin stuff, and then we're now starting to see a bit more of the technologies coming out. So.
But what's important in that situation, I'll just take the mic away, so I'll just speak loud.
It's okay.
What's important in that situation is the ability to contribute. Right? So if I am a DevOps guy, that's my background.
Cool.
And if I see a problem in what I'm trying to implement as an architecture level for the company, I want to fix that and contribute back to the community. Right? That's the bit that matters, because some employers really don't. You need to fork it and keep it in touch. Right?
Yeah.
That's the bit I don't.
Yeah, well,
Why shouldn't everybody benefit?
Exactly, and that's why it's about knowing the sort of client you're going to. If there's a company that are going to be like that and not allow you to go back and get your hands dirty again once it's been done, then they know that's not for you. Yeah, no worries.
I mean, I've been quite refreshing. I've just done a few contract interviews, and I've mainly done permanent interviews before. I've been quite interested to know that I've been basically treated exactly the same as a permanent applicant in some ways, in terms of the tests I get. The upside is I'm not getting those horrible behavioural interview tests. And there's no bullshit.
Well, again, the three of us, we work all on perm, so can't really comment on that. I used to do dual desk. But
we've noticed, and we've heard from our colleagues in the contracting side with particular clients that the rings they're having to jump through. We had a person went to a client in Glasgow, a contract, and they had to do 3 interviews and 2 technical tests for a contract.
For a contract,
and it's crazy. Sorry.
So it's getting tougher. It is getting tougher.
Yeah, it's just it depends totally. Again, I know it seems to be a quote, and it's case by case. Some of them know that it's again, as I mentioned to Maris, it's like we have this role, we need to fill it. It's purely skill based. It's can you do the job? Yes, right. Here's the contract. That's the case with a lot of them, but a lot of them now are sort of moving towards. It seems to be sort of treating people like you said, sort of in a permanent scenario. Some of them are doing that. I don't know enough about the market itself to say which ones are doing which, but we do hear on occasion from the contract side that there are some that are.
I went to one the other day and they said, well, we're only recruiting for contracts because we can't find a permanent person. I said, fine, but I'm just here for the money, basically. And so
fair, yeah.
Lots of good stuff. So I gave them some free, stuff for 3.5 hours, which is cool. Good luck. And they decided they didn't really need that. But in fact, they could have done someone for like a day a week, 2 days a week. But from your point of view, in your business model, there's no market for doing freelancing and stuff necessarily because the commission just isn't going to be there, is it? If you did a day a week job for a freelancer.
The model's quite intricate on the contracting side.
It's quite hard to find freelance clients.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
A lot of these companies that were interested in getting a contract because they couldn't get a permanent person could get a freelancer. I suppose you go to websites to do that, and you're not taking part in that.
Yeah, freelancing, it's not something we get much of. Obviously, we will get more of the traditional contractor or fixed term contract. But freelancing it doesn't really come to agencies like ourselves. You know, we're focused a bit more on the sort of fixed term stuff.
You'll find it less with sort of bigger clients as well. It'll be more, you know, smaller clients that really sort of need the help they can get, because bigger ones will probably be able to find a contractor who, you know, will fill the contract they're looking for, whereas the smaller ones might be able to do that 1 day a week. So as Calvin said, through an agency, it's just less likely to happen. But it's not to say it's not out there. It's just probably more easy to find, you know, through word of mouth, through referrals, things like that.
Right.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
All right.
Very interesting.
Seriously.